These disappearances triggered large searches, national attention, and years of investigation. Resources were committed, leads were followed, and for a time it seemed like answers were inevitable. In Part 4, the focus shifts to cases where everything that could be done was done, and still the outcome remained the same. No resolution, no certainty, only questions that refused to disappear. The capital of the United States, a city of marble and monuments, but also of shadows. Every night, tens of thousands live unseen, under bridges, in shelters, behind the city's polished facade. Among them, one little girl's story would shake Washington to its core. Her name was Relisha Rudd. Her disappearance wasn't just another missing child case. It was a reflection of something deeper, a system stretched thin, a city that looked away, and a silence that still lingers. It was March 2014. Washington, D.C. was gearing up for spring, cherry blossoms about to bloom. But a few miles from the tidal basin, in a cold concrete complex that used to be a hospital, hundreds of families struggled to survive another night. The building was called D.C. General Family Shelter, once a medical facility, now converted into the city's largest homeless shelter. Its halls echoed with crying babies, rolling luggage, and the hum of fluorescent lights that never turned off. This was where Relisha lived with her mother, Shamika Young, and her 3 younger brothers, 4 children sharing a single cramped room, their lives measured by curfews, cafeteria mealtimes, and shelter rules. Relisha Tenno Rudd, born October 29, 2005, was bright, artistic, with a love of color and sparkle. Teachers said she adored arts and crafts, often staying behind after class to draw. Friends said she was kind, shy, and always trying to help younger kids. At just 8 years old, she already carried a maturity beyond her age, a quiet awareness of the instability around her. For Relisha, the world was a mix of chaos and imagination. At school, she was known for her laughter. At home, she learned to be cautious, to adapt to noise, strangers, and rules that changed day to day. DC General wasn't meant to hold hundreds of families for years, but by 2014, it had become the last stop for many. Over 270 children lived there. The walls told stories of exhaustion, resilience, and fear. Residents complained of broken locks, infestations, unsafe conditions. The shelter sat isolated on the edge of the city, fenced in, out of sight, and yet for families like the Rudds, it was all they had. Inside that window, an 8-year-old tried to hold on to normal childhood dreams. DC General was run by the city's Department of Human Services, underfunded, overwhelmed, and often understaffed. Social workers juggled hundreds of cases. The shelter had only a handful of staff monitoring hundreds of residents. Oversight reports later revealed systemic failures, poor background checks, missing records, and inadequate safety training. But in 2014, those failures were still invisible until Relisha disappeared. When the system is stretched thin, danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it walks right through the front door, unnoticed. Among the staff was a janitor named Khalil Tatum. To most, he seemed helpful, polite, trustworthy, but to at least one family he became something more. Tatum would soon enter Relisha's life, offering small gifts, affection, and the promise of care. To a struggling mother trying to make ends meet, those gestures felt like kindness. To investigators later, they would look like grooming. In just a few weeks, Relisha Rudd would vanish, quietly, completely, and the city would realize that even in a building full of people, a child can disappear without anyone noticing. What happened to Relisha Rudd? Who failed her, and how did the cracks of bureaucracy, poverty, and misplaced trust swallow her whole? To answer that, we have to go back inside DC General and follow the trail of a little girl who trusted the wrong man. Morning came early inside DC General. The lights never truly went out, only dimmed. At 6 a.m., the building stirred. Footsteps, crying, the clang of breakfast trays. For hundreds of children, this was home. And for one girl, the thin line between safety and danger was already fraying. Daily life at DC General followed a strict rhythm. Families lined up for food, signed attendance sheets, and passed through security each time they came or went. The shelter sat on the edge of southeast D.C., close enough to downtown to glimpse the Capitol dome, but far enough that it might as well have been another world. Mothers like Shamika Young were required to meet case managers, check in with curfew, and attend mandatory meetings. Children adapted. They played in narrow hallways, made friends, created normalcy from chaos. Relisha loved to draw on napkins or braid her doll's hair while humming songs she'd heard at school. To her brothers, she was a protector, the big sister who made the shelter feel less frightening. Relisha's mother, Shamika, had struggled for years balancing survival, unemployment, and motherhood inside a system that offered too little help. She had applied for housing assistance, attended programs, but progress was slow. Every missed appointment, every paperwork delay meant more time trapped in that shelter. In those conditions, small gestures, a neighbor's help, a staff member's kindness, could mean everything. And that's how Khalil Tatum began to blend into their lives. Khalil Malik Tatum was one of several janitors employed by a private contractor working with the shelter. To residents, he appeared helpful, a man who went beyond his job. He carried toys in his work cart, brought food for families who missed meals, and often gave children small gifts, a toy, a tablet, a few dollars. To some, he was a friendly presence in a place that often felt cold. To others, something about his attention seemed off, but no one intervened. Tatum was in his early 50s with a criminal record, burglary, theft, but the background checks in place failed to flag him effectively. The system that hired him barely noticed who he was. Over the months, Tatum's bond with Relisha grew. He'd call her his little princess. He'd take her to events outside the shelter, the Disney on Ice show at the Verizon Center, a pool party, shopping trips. To a child like Relisha, those moments felt magical. To a mother under pressure, they felt like help, a man giving her daughter opportunities she couldn't afford. But behind those outings, there was no authorization, no written consent, no caseworker approval. A janitor had unfettered access to a child, and no one in the system stopped it. At Payne Elementary School, where Relisha was enrolled, teachers began noticing absences. Days turned to weeks, but each time they asked, they received the same explanation. Relisha was sick under the care of Dr. Tatum. The story sounded plausible. Tatum had posed as a doctor before. He even arranged fake phone calls to the school, impersonating a physician. No one had ever met this so-called doctor. But the paperwork passed, the excuses continued, and the silence grew longer. By February 2014, Relisha had missed more than 30 days of school. Teachers filed reports. The school social worker called the family. But miscommunication between agencies delayed any action. Inside the shelter, no one raised an alarm. Tatum was still seen daily, still trusted. Outside, life went on. The city prepared for spring, and in one of its most crowded shelters, a predator walked freely among children. In late February, Relisha left the shelter with Tatum and never returned. Her mother thought she was safe. Her teachers believed she was under care. But in truth, she was already gone. By late February 2014, winter was losing its grip on Washington. The cherry trees along the Potomac stood bare, waiting for spring. Inside D.C. General, the usual noise had dulled. Fewer children laughing, fewer footsteps echoing down the hall. Somewhere between the daily chaos and official indifference, a child slipped away unnoticed. 8-year-old Relisha Rudd, last seen alive on a hotel surveillance camera, walking beside the man her mother trusted. On February 26, 2014, security cameras at the Holiday Inn Express in Northeast D.C. recorded what investigators now call the beginning of the end. The footage shows Khalil Tatum and Relisha Rudd walking calmly down a long hallway. No sign of fear, no hesitation, just a little girl in boots and a coat, holding what appeared to be a plastic bag, perhaps toys, perhaps clothes. To anyone else, they looked like father and daughter. But Tatum was not her father, and that night, something shifted. That moment, captured in grainy pixels, remains the last confirmed moving image of Relisha alive. Between February 26th and March 1st, Relisha was seen at least once more, this time at a Days Inn along New York Avenue, Northeast D.C. Witnesses recall seeing her with Tatum. Hotel employees described her as quiet, reserved, never showing distress. But after that weekend, she was gone. Calls to her family went unanswered. The shelter didn't report her missing because technically her mother had allowed her to leave with Tatum. Days turned to weeks, a child missing, and no one knew. The city's bureaucratic chain of command, schools, social services, police, failed to connect the dots. Each agency assumed someone else was responsible. Even as Relisha vanished from school, calls kept coming. Dr. Tatum, the supposed physician treating her, phoned the school saying she was ill. The flu, pneumonia, a long recovery. The school staff grew uneasy. But each time, the voice on the other end sounded calm, professional, believable. It wasn't a doctor. It was Khalil Tatum himself, impersonating one. When the school counselor tried to meet this doctor face-to-face, he never showed up. By March 13, nearly 3 weeks after Relisha was last seen, her school contacted Child and Family Services. Caseworkers began asking questions. Where was the child? Who was this doctor? Why hadn't anyone seen her? On March 19th, authorities officially launched a missing child investigation. 18 days. That's how long it took for someone to sound the alarm. For a child her age, every hour mattered. For Relisha, those hours had slipped away in silence. Detectives raced to piece together the timeline. They discovered hotel records, surveillance footage, and a trail of receipts, all pointing to Tatum. On March 2nd, the day after Relisha's last confirmed sighting, Tatum visited a Home Depot in Prince George's County, Maryland. Surveillance footage captured him buying a shovel, large trash bags, and a container of quicklime, a substance often used to accelerate decomposition. Investigators would later call this the most chilling discovery in the timeline. By the time anyone realized what it meant, it was far too late. As word spread, Washington, D.C. erupted in disbelief. Flyers went up across the city. Reporters swarmed the shelter. Police searched parks, motels, rivers, anywhere a child could be hidden. Relisha's image, her round face, her bright eyes, was suddenly everywhere. But every lead came too late. Khalil Tatum had vanished. In less than 3 weeks, a trusted janitor had disappeared with a child. And as investigators closed in, what they found next would darken the story forever. A body in a motel room, a gun, and still, no Relisha. March 20th, 2014. It had been 22 days since anyone last saw 8-year-old Relisha Rudd. That morning, a welfare check led officers to a motel in Prince George's County, Maryland, about a 30-minute drive from the shelter where Relisha once lived. Room 132, door closed, curtains drawn. Inside, police found a man, Khalil Tatum, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but there was no sign of Relisha. In the room, detectives found a handgun, a Bible, hotel receipts, and personal items, some belonging to Tatum, some not. They found Relisha's family photographs inside his wallet, proof of a connection far deeper than a casual acquaintance. But there was no physical trace of the child herself, no clothing, no fingerprints, no DNA. It was as if she had been erased. Within hours, the search widened. Police, volunteers, and federal agents scoured parks, rivers, and abandoned buildings across D.C. and Maryland. The FBI joined the hunt, declaring Relisha Rudd an endangered missing child. Helicopters hovered over the Anacostia River. K-9 units searched along highways and motel corridors. But nothing, not a single confirmed sighting since February 26. Investigators traced Tatum's movements backward through surveillance footage. They discovered that in the days before his death, he had checked into multiple motels, often alone, sometimes under false names. One of those stays, at a different hotel near Oxon Hill, was captured on camera, showing him carrying large black trash bags to a dumpster behind the building. When police searched the dumpster, they found no body, only discarded cleaning supplies and bedding. Still, the images haunted investigators. It looked like a man disposing of something he could never explain. The same day Tatum was found dead, police discovered his wife, Andrea Tatum, shot and killed in a separate hotel room across town. Witnesses later said Khalil had appeared distraught in the days before. He'd told friends he had messed up and that his life was over. Investigators concluded he killed Andrea, then turned the gun on himself. 2 bodies, 2 hotels, 1 missing child, and no clear answers. Detectives explored every theory. Did Tatum kill Relisha before ending his life? Did he hand her off to someone else? Some believed he buried her body in one of the remote construction sites he once worked at. Others thought she might have been sold or trafficked. But no evidence, no witnesses, no confession, no remains ever confirmed any scenario. The case was both horrifying and hollow, all leads pointing to one man now dead, leaving behind only speculation. In the weeks that followed, city leaders faced outrage, parents demanded answers. Reporters asked how an employee with a criminal past gained unsupervised access to children inside a city shelter. Investigations revealed systemic negligence, unverified staff, communication breakdowns between the school system and child services, and a lack of accountability. For many, Relisha's disappearance wasn't just a tragedy. It was a mirror held up to a broken system. Months passed. The shelter where it all began, DC General, was eventually shut down, its hallways emptied, its doors locked for good. Volunteers still searched creeks and forests on weekends. Her photo stayed pinned to corkboards in police stations, but year after year, hope faded. The case remains open to this day. No arrests, no remains, no closure. The man who might have known what happened is gone. The evidence that could have spoken is missing, and an entire city is left with a name, a photo, and a haunting question that refuses to fade. Where is Relisha Rudd? When the search teams went home and the news cameras turned away, the silence settled in. A silence that stretched from DC General's empty hallways to the quiet corners of the city where posters of a missing girl slowly faded in the rain. Relisha Rudd's story didn't end in a headline. It ended in questions. In the years that followed, her name became a symbol, not just of a tragedy, but of everything that failed her. The shelter system that couldn't protect its children, the bureaucracy that lost track of an 8-year-old for almost a month, the city that looked away until it was too late. Her family grieved without answers. Her brothers grew up with the memory of a sister frozen in time, smiling from posters and old photographs, never older, never found. For them, the word missing became permanent. Community groups in Washington rallied. Every year, they held marches, vigils, and awareness events. They spoke Relisha's name out loud, a reminder that forgotten children still matter. Her disappearance led to reforms in how DC handles at-risk youth. Shelters began new background check systems. Schools tightened reporting procedures. Social workers got new training. But change came slowly and unevenly, because the deeper truth wasn't just about one missing girl. At the time of Relisha's disappearance, hundreds of children were living in shelters across the capital. Most were unseen, their stories unheard. Her case forced Washington to look directly at what it had ignored for years: poverty, homelessness, and the dangerous cracks in the system meant to protect. For many, Relisha wasn't just a missing child. She was a reflection of a society that doesn't always see its most vulnerable. Every March, her name trends again. People post her photo online, share the same question: where is Relisha? Neighborhood murals keep her image alive, painted in bright colors, with angel wings and smiles, surrounded by the words, "Never forget." In schools, teachers use her story as a lesson about awareness and vigilance, the importance of speaking up when something doesn't feel right. Her legacy became a message, not about fear, but about responsibility. One activist said, "Relisha's story is what happens when everyone thinks someone else is watching." Another said, "She is every child who slips through the cracks and every voice we fail to hear." The city renamed shelters, restructured agencies, but the shadow of DC General still lingers. The place that lost her, now demolished, stands as both a warning and a memorial. An empty space, where 1,000 stories ended and one never did. It's been over a decade now. No one has ever been charged. No trace has ever been found. The case remains open, and her face, still on the missing persons registry, reminds everyone how easily a child can disappear in plain sight. Some nights, locals say they still see her posters in forgotten corners of the city. Torn, faded, but still there. Relisha Rudd was 8 years old. She loved the color pink. She wanted to be a teacher. And somewhere between the shelter's walls and the city's blind spots, her story vanished. But her name still echoes, in every effort to protect the next child, in every law rewritten, and in every parent who watches more closely now. Relisha Rudd vanished from a place where someone was supposed to be watching. Her disappearance raised immediate questions about trust, responsibility, and what was happening behind the scenes. The next case begins very differently, but ends in the same uncertainty. A young woman, a sudden change of plans, and a moment where she was seen for the last time before stepping away from everything she knew. February 9th, 2004. A quiet Monday night in rural New Hampshire. The temperature hovered just below freezing. Snow drifted over the two-lane stretch of Route 112, a road that winds through the woods like a ribbon of ice. Around 7:30 p.m., a black Saturn sedan was found crashed against a snowbank. The engine still warm, the driver's seat empty, no footprints leading away, no sign of struggle. The driver was 21-year-old Maura Murray, a nursing student from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She had vanished, without a trace. Maura's disappearance is one of the most perplexing mysteries in modern American true crime. A college student, athletic, disciplined, and bright, gone within minutes, in a place where almost nothing ever happens. It's been called the internet's first missing person case, a mystery that's outlasted theories, documentaries, and 2 decades of speculation. But behind all the noise, behind the online detectives and message boards, there's a real person who vanished in the cold. Tonight, we're going to retrace her steps, piece by piece, from the days before she disappeared to the last moments anyone ever saw her. Maura was born on May 4th, 1982, in Hanson, Massachusetts, the fourth of 5 children in a close-knit family. Her father, Fred, worked in maintenance. Her mother, Lori, was a nurse. She was known for her discipline, a strong student, a track runner, someone who planned her future carefully. After high school, Maura entered West Point, the U.S. military academy, where she studied chemical engineering for a short time before transferring to UMass Amherst to pursue nursing. Her life looked steady from the outside, but like many young adults, she was juggling pressure, school, relationships, family expectations. And in the weeks leading up to February 2004, cracks began to show. On the surface, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But in the days before she vanished, Maura's behavior shifted. Subtle, but telling. On Thursday, February 5th, while working her campus security shift, she broke down in tears after a phone call with her sister. Her supervisor sent her home. That weekend, she visited her father in Massachusetts. They went car shopping. They had dinner together. Everything seemed fine. But late that Saturday night, Maura crashed her father's new car on her way back to campus. No one was hurt. Her father brushed it off as a simple mistake, but some say it marked the beginning of something unraveling. By Monday, February 9th, Maura would email her professors, saying she'd be gone for a week due to a death in the family. There was no death. She packed her car, withdrew cash from an ATM, and began to drive north. Maura Murray left the UMass Amherst campus around 4:30 p.m. No goodbye note, no message to friends, just a quiet exit. The GPS era hadn't quite begun. She printed out MapQuest directions, old school, deliberate. Her destination, a small area near Burlington, Vermont. Maybe she was going on a trip to clear her mind. Maybe she was running from something. At 3:40, she stopped at an ATM and withdrew $280, nearly everything in her account. On the security footage, she looks calm, focused, no sign of distress. Minutes later, she went to a nearby liquor store. A box of Franzia wine, Kahlua, Bailey's, and vodka. Enough for a weekend away, or maybe something darker. From there, she got back on the road, heading north into the cold. The drive from Amherst to New Hampshire is long, roughly 2.5 hours. That night, the air was dry but freezing. Darkness falls early in February. Out here, once you pass the last gas station, it's just you, the trees, and the sound of tires over ice. Cell service is spotty. The houses are far apart. For reasons no one fully understands, Maura kept going, past safer roads, deeper into the woods, heading toward a place called Haverhill, New Hampshire, a town barely on the map. At approximately 7:27 p.m., a local resident, Faith Westman, heard a sudden thud outside her home. When she looked out her window, she saw a black Saturn facing the wrong direction on Route 112. Its front end was smashed into a snowbank. The airbags had deployed. Inside, she could see movement, a figure. Faith dialed 911. It was 7:27 p.m. Just minutes later, a neighbor driving home, Butch Atwood, a local school bus driver, saw the scene and pulled over to help. He described a young woman standing beside the car, shivering slightly. She told him she was fine, that she'd already called AAA. Butch knew there was no cell reception there. He offered to call from his house anyway. She politely declined. When he drove away, she was still standing by the car, lights flashing against the snow. It would be the last time anyone ever saw Maura Murray. Police arrived at 7:46 p.m., 19 minutes after Faith's 911 call. By then, Maura was gone. Her car was locked, the airbags deployed. Inside were her belongings, a packed bag of clothes, textbooks, toiletries, and a stuffed animal from her boyfriend. There were signs she'd been drinking. A box of wine had spilled across the seats, but there were no footprints leading away from the road, no drag marks, no blood, just an empty car and silence. Officers searched the immediate area, flashlights cutting through the dark, but there was no trace of her. Some believe she ran off into the woods to hide or get help and succumbed to the cold. Others believe someone picked her up before police arrived. But that night, on Route 112, all that remained of Maura Murray was her car, sitting quietly in the snow, the engine ticking as it cooled. A mystery had just begun. Officer Cecil Smith arrived on Route 112 at 7:46 p.m., just 19 minutes after the 911 call. What he found looked simple at first. A one-car accident on a lonely winter road. The black Saturn's front end was pressed into a snowbank, its rear still jutting slightly into the road. The hazard lights blinked in slow rhythm, a pulse of red and amber against the white snow. But something didn't feel right. The driver's seat was empty. The doors were locked, the windshield was cracked, airbags out, but no one was inside. Officer Smith looked around. The air was still. He saw no footprints leading away from the car. No drag marks, no tracks that would suggest someone running or limping into the woods. The temperature was around 15 degrees Fahrenheit, bitterly cold. Anyone outside for long without proper gear wouldn't last. He called in backup, then started scanning the roadside ditches with a flashlight, beam cutting across tree trunks and snow. But there was only silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like it's waiting for something to happen. In those first minutes, neighbors had watched from their windows. Faith Westman, who made the 911 call, told police she'd seen a man smoking a cigarette inside the car, though others believe she may have mistaken the reflection of an airbag or her own porch light. Another neighbor, Butch Atwood, the school bus driver who'd stopped earlier, confirmed that he'd spoken to a young woman, Maura, standing outside the vehicle. She insisted she didn't need help. He drove home just down the road and called 911 again, reporting the crash. By the time officers arrived, she had vanished. Local police, firefighters, and neighbors began searching the immediate area that night. Flashlights cut through the woods, beams glinting off ice. They called her name over and over, Maura, but the forest gave no reply. Dogs barked in the distance, car doors slammed, radios crackled. For a small New England town, it was the kind of night no one forgets. Officers canvassed the homes nearby, hoping someone might have seen her walking or been approached for help. But every door they knocked on told the same story. No one had seen her. As the search stretched past midnight, the snow began to fall harder. Visibility dropped, the cold deepened, and with each hour that passed, hope slipped further away. By dawn, the scene had changed. A tow truck hauled away Maura's Saturn. Officers documented the interior, the airbags, the empty bottles, the stuffed animal she'd kept in the back seat. There was no wallet, no cell phone, no sign of foul play. When the sun rose over the mountains, search teams assembled: firefighters, volunteers, state police, and K-9 units. The dogs caught her scent from the car, followed it east along the road for about 100 yards. Then the trail ended abruptly in the middle of the road, as if she'd vanished into thin air or been picked up by someone passing through. That morning, Maura's father, Fred Murray, received the call no parent ever wants. He drove straight to New Hampshire, desperate, confused, clinging to the belief that his daughter must have gotten lost or injured nearby. When he arrived and saw the crash site for himself, his fear turned to disbelief. Everything about the scene defied logic. Her car locked, her belongings untouched. No footprints, no clues. Police considered the possibility that Maura had wandered off intoxicated or distraught, maybe into the woods. But as daylight faded again and no trace appeared, no footprints, no body, no scent trail, that theory grew thinner. Whatever happened to Maura that night, it hadn't been random. The search that began as routine had just crossed into the unknown. Over the next 48 hours, the search for Maura Murray intensified. Police, firefighters, and volunteers fanned out across miles of rugged terrain. They followed snowmobile paths, frozen rivers, and abandoned cabins. K-9 units sniffed the edges of the road. Helicopters hovered low with heat sensors scanning the trees. But Maura's trail, what little of it there was, had gone cold almost as soon as it began. Every hour that passed made it less likely she was still near that crash site. And yet, there was nowhere else to look. Fred Murray arrived in Haverhill that morning, exhausted, terrified, and already running through worst-case scenarios. He retraced every possible route she might have taken, walking miles of road himself. He searched ditches, barns, and sheds, calling out her name until his voice cracked. Reporters who met him that week described a man who refused to stop moving. "If she's out here, I'll find her," he said. For days he slept in his car or in cheap motels nearby, waking before dawn to begin again. Despite the large-scale effort, communication between agencies was uneven. Local police led the case, but coordination with state authorities lagged. Leads came in, but many were contradictory. Possible sightings, strange calls, pieces that didn't fit. Investigators checked nearby motels and rest stops. They questioned residents up and down Route 112. Still, there was no evidence of a crime, no indication she'd been abducted or attacked. Yet no sign she'd simply walked away either. It was as if both explanations canceled each other out. By the end of the week, news crews began arriving from Boston and New York. Cameras captured Fred and his family distributing flyers, handing out photos of Maura's face, bright smile, dark hair, brown eyes. Small towns along the Connecticut River began recognizing her instantly. Posters appeared in grocery stores, gas stations, libraries. The coverage drew attention, but not answers. Police maintained that Maura's disappearance was still classified as a missing person case, not a criminal one. For her family, that distinction felt impossible to accept. As days passed without results, exhaustion began to show. Volunteers thinned out. The media shifted focus, but Fred stayed. He stood by the roadside, eyes scanning the forest. He held on to the one thought that kept him from falling apart, that maybe somewhere she was alive, waiting. He told a reporter, "You can't lose your child and go home. You just can't." Around this time, the internet began to take hold of Maura's story. It started with small true crime forums, people sharing timelines, analyzing photos of the crash site, trading theories late into the night. The case had no resolution, no closure, and that vacuum drew people in. Some searched to help, others searched to solve. Threads multiplied, new theories appeared daily, strangers trying to make sense of something senseless. The mystery became more than an investigation. It became a digital echo chamber of empathy, curiosity, and obsession. As attention grew, so did conflict. Family members sometimes clashed with online investigators over privacy, accuracy, and tone. The same technology that kept Maura's name alive also complicated the search for truth. Misinformation spread quickly, blurred photos, unverified stories, rumors mistaken for fact. Through it all, the one certainty remained: Maura was still missing. By late February, formal searches were scaled back. The landscape thawed, revealing no new evidence. The Murray family returned home, though Fred often came back to New Hampshire, driving that same stretch of Route 112 again and again. Sometimes he'd park where the Saturn had once been, step out into the cold and listen. He'd look down the road and whisper her name, just loud enough to feel he was still reaching for her. For him, and for thousands following online, Maura wasn't just a missing person anymore. She had become a question that refused to fade. In the years that followed, the road where Maura disappeared became a landmark of questions. Locals grew used to seeing search parties, new faces, new maps, the same hope. Each season brought someone new who believed they might find what everyone else had missed. But Route 112 kept its silence. The trees, the river, the snow, they all remained the same, watching quietly as the world kept asking. Officially, the case never closed. Over the next decade, New Hampshire State Police continued to receive tips, hundreds of them. Some led to excavations, others to interviews and re-interviews. In 2006, search teams returned to the area with ground-penetrating radar. In 2013, another round of investigators re-examined evidence from the crash site, comparing DNA samples, reanalyzing the car. Each effort brought possibilities, but no proof. The questions that began in 2004 still had no answers. Then came a new wave: journalists, filmmakers, and podcasters. The story of Maura Murray spread far beyond New England. Documentaries aired on national television, podcasts dissected every minute of her last day. Each new retelling brought light, but also noise. The deeper people searched, the more divided the theories became. For every person trying to help, another argued about what had already been said. Still, the case refused to fade. It evolved. In the digital age, Maura's disappearance became one of the internet's first living mysteries. Through it all, the Murray family endured. Fred remained relentless, pressing for answers, pushing for transparency, and keeping Maura's name alive through interviews and advocacy. Her siblings joined online groups, coordinated new searches, and continued to challenge cold case units to revisit the investigation. For them, time wasn't distance, it was fuel. "We can't stop," Fred once said, "because stopping means accepting, and we're not there yet." As the years turned to decades, the story changed shape. The people who'd once searched with flashlights now shared memories instead, remembering that cold night in February, the sound of crunching snow, the sight of those blinking hazard lights. A generation that had grown up hearing about Maura's case online now visited the site in person, leaving flowers or small tokens near the guardrail. The road itself became a quiet memorial, not marked by signs, but by silence. There are still no confirmed sightings, no verified trail, and no definitive explanation for what happened that night. Did she leave willingly? Was she met with harm? Or did she simply vanish into the wilderness that surrounded her? Theories abound, but evidence remains scarce. Investigators say all leads are still welcome, because sometimes, even decades later, one detail can change everything. In the end, Maura Murray's story is not just about disappearance. It's about endurance. The endurance of a father's hope, of a family's fight, of a question that refuses to fade. And maybe that's what keeps her story alive. Not the mystery of where she went, but the proof of how deeply people still care. On a lonely stretch of Route 112, beneath the whispering trees of New Hampshire, that care still lingers, a light that has never gone out. Decades pass, but some stories never loosen their hold. Along Route 112, time feels different, stretched thin between memory and silence. The forest grows, snow falls, seasons change, yet one question keeps echoing through these hills. Where did Maura go? Before the headlines, before the theories, there was a young woman with plans, with friends, with a future already forming in her mind. Photos show her smiling, confident, determined, alive. Those moments frozen in time now hold more weight than anyone could have imagined. They remind us that behind every mystery, there's a person who once dreamed of ordinary days. For the detectives still assigned to the case, The search is now history and hope intertwined. They revisit old files, recheck statements, review data through new technology. There are no breakthroughs, only persistence. The belief that every unanswered question deserves one more look. One of them once said, "You never stop looking, you just pause between searches." In the woods, volunteers still gather. Some are locals, others travel from states away. They bring maps, GPS devices, and hope. They walk the same terrain year after year, knowing the odds, but choosing to walk anyway. To them, Maura is not just a headline, she's a promise unfinished. Online, her name still circulates, in forums, podcasts, documentaries, and social threads that dissect every detail. Some of it helps, some of it hurts, but together it keeps the case alive in a world that forgets too easily. Each post, each video, each voice saying her name, they form a digital vigil that never goes dark. For the Murrays, time has been both enemy and companion. They have learned to live between hope and heartbreak, to wake each morning carrying the same unanswered question. Birthdays come and go, anniversaries pass, yet the search continues, even in silence. Love, in its purest form, refuses to surrender. Somewhere, out there, the road winds on, quiet, empty, eternal. And maybe that's the truth hidden inside this story, not just loss, but endurance. For every mystery like Maura's, there are people who keep believing, keep walking, keep hoping. That hope is the light left behind, and as long as it burns, she is never truly gone. Maura Murray disappeared along a quiet stretch of road, leaving behind a scene that suggested urgency, but offered no clear direction. Despite extensive attention, the trail stopped abruptly. The next case moves away from roads and into the wilderness, where a brief moment of distraction during a family outing led to one of the most extensive searches in history. And still, no clear answers. June 14th, 1969. A family trip meant to celebrate Father's Day turned into one of the most haunting disappearances in American history. 6-year-old Dennis Martin, bright-eyed, shy, and full of life, vanished into the thick green wilderness of the Great Smoky Mountains. Hundreds searched. Helicopters scanned the ridges. The FBI, Green Berets, park rangers, and volunteers all joined forces. But Dennis was never found. To this day, no one knows what really happened. The Great Smoky Mountains, a place of beauty and silence. Even in daylight, the forests here feel ancient, almost alive. The air hangs heavy with mist, and sound doesn't travel the way it should. It's the kind of place where you can call out and your voice just disappears. Cades Cove, Tennessee, a valley tucked deep inside the national park. A place where the ridges fold over each other like waves, and the trees stretch so high they blot out the sun. For hikers, it's paradise. For the unprepared, it can be a maze with no exit. It was here in June of 1969 that the Martin family began their trip, a Father's Day weekend tradition that had started years before. Bill Martin, his wife, and their 2 sons, Douglas and Dennis, made the drive from Knoxville in their red station wagon, excited for a weekend of camping and hiking. They were an ordinary American family, close-knit, outdoorsy, happy. They knew these woods. They weren't strangers to the trails. But this time, something was different. The morning of June 14th was warm and bright, the kind of day that tricks you into feeling safe. Birds sang over the creeks, wildflowers lined the paths, and the hum of cicadas filled the air. They set out toward Spence Field, a popular clearing high up in the mountains, about 7 miles from their camp. The boys ran ahead, laughing and joking, ducking between the trees while their father trailed behind. Bill Martin would later recall that Dennis had been quieter than usual that morning, shy, careful with his steps, always glancing back to make sure he wasn't too far from his dad. Dennis was just 6 years old, small, with short brown hair and a bright red t-shirt, the kind of color you can't miss in a sea of green. But that's the strange thing about the Smokies. No matter how bright your clothes are, once you step off the trail, the forest swallows you whole. As they climbed higher, the air grew thinner. Clouds rolled in, casting long shadows across the path. By the time they reached the ridge near Spence Field, they were nearly a mile above sea level. From up there, you could see for miles, endless green stretching into blue haze. But what the Martins didn't know was that beyond those ridges, the terrain dropped sharply into deep ravines, creeks, and rock faces. One wrong step, one wrong turn, and you could vanish without a sound. Locals said the mountains had their own moods, shifting from calm to cruel in minutes. Old rangers used to warn hikers, the Smokies don't take kindly to the careless. By early afternoon, the family reached Spence Field. It was peaceful. The clearing was bright and open, soft grass, cool wind, and distant thunder rolling beyond the peaks. They didn't know it yet, but that field, the place they'd chosen for laughter and play, would soon become one of the most infamous locations in national park history. Looking back, it's easy to say everything felt ordinary, but sometimes the most terrifying stories begin that way. A perfect family trip, a beautiful summer day, and a place that feels too peaceful to be dangerous, until suddenly, it is. By late afternoon, the Martins had reached the top of Spence Field, a vast, open meadow surrounded by thick forest on all sides. It was just past 4:30 p.m. The air had cooled, the sunlight dimming into a soft, golden haze. The boys, Dennis and his older brother Douglas, ran through the tall grass, laughing and tumbling down small slopes. Their father, Bill, watched from a distance, smiling. Other hikers were nearby too, including another family, the Keys, who were also enjoying the day. Their children joined the Martin boys for a few minutes of play. The kids decided to come up with a game, a simple one. Hide behind the trees, then jump out and surprise the grown-ups. It was harmless. It was innocent. And yet, that game would mark the last moment anyone ever saw Dennis Martin alive. Bill watched his sons as they planned their next move. Douglas whispered to the other boys to circle around one side of the clearing. Dennis, the smallest, decided to sneak around the other. He giggled, then slipped behind a clump of trees just a few yards away. Bill saw him go. He knew exactly where his son had hidden. He expected to see Dennis jump out again in just a few seconds, laughing, shouting, proud of his little surprise. But Dennis never came out. Bill called out, "Dennis, come on, you can come out now." No answer. He called again, louder this time. Still nothing. He smiled nervously at first, thinking Dennis was trying to trick him. He walked over to the trees, the same trees he'd just seen his son step behind. But there was no one there. Bill's voice grew louder, more urgent. He called again, scanning the tree line, turning in every direction. Nothing but the soft hum of the mountains answered back. He started walking, then running, across the field. The other hikers joined in, calling Dennis's name, searching the trees, peering over small ridges. But it was as if the forest had swallowed him whole. No cry, no footsteps, no sound of running, just nothing. Bill ran downhill, following a faint animal trail, hoping maybe Dennis had wandered farther than he thought. He ran nearly 2 miles in less than an hour, shouting his son's name until his voice was gone. But every path looked the same. The ridges twisted and curved, blurring into shadow. When he finally turned back toward camp, the light was fading fast. Rain clouds were gathering over the mountains. In the Smokies, storms moved fast, and this one would be one of the worst of the summer. By the time Bill made it back to Spence Field, panic had taken hold. The family kept searching into the night, flashlights flickering through the fog. But the deeper they went, the darker it became. And somewhere in that darkness, a 6-year-old boy was gone. In that single moment, somewhere between daylight and dusk, Dennis Martin vanished. No witnesses, no sound, no clue, just a father's voice echoing through the storm, unanswered, and the forest silent once more. Night fell fast over the Smokies. The storm came in without warning, thick sheets of rain pounding the trees, lightning tearing across the sky. The Martins were still out there, shouting into the darkness, their voices lost in the roar of wind and thunder. Somewhere in that vast wilderness, a 6-year-old boy was missing, and the forest had already closed around him. Bill Martin searched until his legs gave out. He combed the field, the creek, the tree line, anywhere Dennis might have gone. He called his name again and again, his voice hoarse from shouting. Every rustle in the dark made his heart stop. Every shadow looked like his son. but it was only wind or rain or nothing at all. By midnight, the storm was at its peak. The rain came down so hard it turned the trails into rivers. Thunder echoed off the ridges like distant cannon fire. The temperature dropped into the 40s. For a child wearing only a red t-shirt, shorts, and sneakers, it was a deadly night to be lost. By dawn, the storm had cleared, leaving behind silence. The world felt different. The field where Dennis had vanished was soaked and muddy, the air heavy and cold. Bill Martin hiked down to the ranger station at Cades Cove, desperate for help. Word spread quickly. Within hours, park rangers organized a formal search party. No one realized it yet, but this was about to become the largest search in the history of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. By the second day, hundreds of people were on the ground. Park rangers, Boy Scouts, volunteers, even members of the U.S. Army. They spread out across miles of wilderness, steep ridges, caves, ravines, and streams. Helicopters flew low, scanning the forest with infrared sensors. Dogs were brought in to track scent, but the storm had changed everything. Any trace of Dennis, footprints, clothing, scent trails, had been washed away. The terrain itself fought against them. The Smokies are full of sinkholes, dense laurel thickets, and sudden drops that vanish under leaves. You can walk 10 feet off a trail and never find your way back. Searchers shouted until their voices went raw. They tied ribbons on trees to mark their paths, afraid of getting lost themselves. As hours turned into days, hope began to fade, but the Martins refused to stop. Bill Martin kept joining every new search group he could. He barely slept, barely ate. Every time someone called out that they'd found something, a scrap of fabric, a footprint, he ran toward it, hoping. Each time it led nowhere. A boot print from a ranger, a piece of trash left by another hiker, nothing that belonged to Dennis. By the end of the third day, the search covered over 50 square miles, and still, not one solid clue. It was as if Dennis had never been there. As word spread, more volunteers poured in. Hikers, college students, even off-duty soldiers. Soon there were so many people in the woods that search experts began to worry they were doing more harm than good. Every step risked covering up footprints or evidence. In one area, dogs reportedly picked up a faint trail, but it led to nothing. Others claimed to hear strange sounds in the woods at night, echoes that seemed too deliberate to be the wind. But no one could find the source. The forest felt alive, watching, listening, and not giving up its secret. By the end of the week, the search effort had grown to over 1,400 people. Green Berets joined in, quietly, efficiently, searching areas no one else could reach. They said little, worked alone, and left just as quietly. Their presence added a new layer of mystery to an already haunting story. Still, despite the manpower, the equipment, and the endless miles of searching, Dennis was gone. No footprints, no fabric, no trace, just silence. By the fourth day, the Great Smoky Mountains had become a city of searchers. The roar of helicopters echoed through the valleys. Jeep convoys rolled down muddy service roads. Radio chatter filled the air, overlapping voices, coordinates, static. And yet, in all that noise, the mountains remained silent. The forest gave nothing back. The operation had grown far beyond a missing child case. It was now one of the largest mobilizations in national park history. Park rangers, Boy Scouts, volunteer firefighters, police, and soldiers, over 1,400 people, scoured the mountains. The search area stretched across miles of rough wilderness. Every hollow, every ridge, every ravine was mapped and checked, over and over again. But there was nothing. Not a single footprint, not a single piece of clothing. No trail, no cry for help, no sign of struggle, just an endless forest. As the days passed, the mystery deepened. Search dogs were brought in from as far away as Kentucky and Alabama. They caught faint traces of scent, but every trail led to a dead end. The rain had washed away almost everything. Some dogs refused to move past certain points, whimpering, circling, then lying down. Handlers couldn't explain it. They marked the areas on the map, but when they returned later, the scent was gone. It was as if the forest itself was erasing the evidence. Then came the helicopters, circling above the ridges, flying low over valleys, scanning for any flash of red cloth. Infrared cameras searched for heat signatures in the undergrowth. They found nothing. From the air, the Smokies looked endless, layer after layer of misty ridges and shadowed valleys. It was like searching for a ghost in a green ocean. And then, something unexpected. A new group arrived. They were quiet, efficient, and heavily equipped. The U.S. Army's Special Forces, the Green Berets, joined the search. No one knew exactly why. They worked separately from the Rangers and volunteers, kept their distance, and didn't share details of their search areas. Some thought it was just protocol, the military helping in difficult terrain. Others couldn't shake the feeling that their presence meant something more. Even years later, survivors of the search described the same memory. A line of soldiers moving in silence through the fog, faces hidden behind camouflage paint, like ghosts in the trees. FBI agents were also called in to assist. They interviewed hikers, campers, and locals. Some remembered hearing a scream around the same time Dennis disappeared. Others said they saw nothing unusual at all. Every lead hit a wall. Every clue dissolved into uncertainty. Bill Martin stayed in the park for weeks, joining the search every day, refusing to leave. He walked the same trails over and over, calling his son's name. But the woods only answered with silence. As days turned into weeks, morale began to break. Volunteers were exhausted. Food supplies ran low. The press swarmed the area, asking questions no one could answer. What could make a child vanish so completely, within sight of his family, in daylight? How could hundreds of trained searchers find nothing at all? There was no crime scene, no struggle, no body, just a vanishing. By mid-July, more than a month after Dennis disappeared, the official search was called off. Some rangers stayed behind for weeks, hoping for a clue, a sign, a miracle. None came. When the last helicopter lifted off, the sound faded into the distance, leaving only the quiet hum of the forest. For the first time in weeks, the Smoky Mountains were still again. And in that silence, the mystery of Dennis Martin was sealed. It had been one of the largest search efforts ever undertaken by the National Park Service, and yet it ended with more questions than answers. Dennis Martin, 6 years old, bright, shy, and full of life, had simply disappeared into the woods, and the Great Smoky Mountains kept their secret. While hundreds searched the Tennessee side of the Smokies, something was happening just a few miles away, across the state line in North Carolina. That same Saturday afternoon, June 14, 1969, another family, Harold Key, his wife, and their children, were hiking near Rowan's Creek, close to the park's western edge. The woods there were different, darker, thicker, the kind where daylight fades early even before sunset. They were finishing lunch when a sharp, echoing scream broke through the quiet. Not the sound of an animal, not the cry of a bird, a human sound, high-pitched, sudden. Then, silence. The Keys froze. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Harold Key looked uphill toward the ridge line. Between the trees, he saw movement, a figure darting through the brush, fast, low, purposeful. At first, he thought it was a bear. But bears don't run upright, and this was upright. He described it later as a rough-looking man, maybe dirty, maybe barefoot, moving quickly as if hiding something. The figure vanished into the timber and was gone. At the time, the Keys didn't think much of it. They packed their things and left the area before nightfall. It wasn't until the following day, when news of a missing boy spread through the mountains, that Harold Key realized the timing. The scream he'd heard had come around 5:30 p.m., the same hour Dennis Martin vanished, only a few miles away as the crow flies. When Key went to the Rangers, his story immediately raised questions. Could the two events be connected? Could Dennis have somehow crossed the rugged ridges separating Spence Field and Rowan's Creek in just 1 hour? For a 6-year-old, the terrain would have been almost impossible. The theory divided investigators. Some believed the sighting was coincidence, two unrelated moments on a busy summer afternoon. Others weren't so sure. Bill Martin, desperate for answers, insisted the lead be pursued. The FBI listened carefully. They sent agents to interview the Keys in their home days later. The description remained the same: a scream, a flash of red, and a rough figure running through the trees. No one could ever say for certain what it meant. What made it strange was the timing of the military search. Green Berets had already been combing nearby ridges. Some locals later said soldiers were suddenly redirected toward the very area of the Key sighting, as if they already knew something. Officially, that connection was never confirmed, but it fueled decades of speculation. Why were elite soldiers searching so deep, so quickly, and alone? What exactly had they been told to look for? In the years that followed, the Key family's account became one of the most debated details in the Dennis Martin case. Skeptics point to the impossible distance, the uncertainty of sound in the mountains. Voices echo, screams carry for miles, and shadows can play tricks. Yet for many, the coincidence remains too sharp to ignore. Two families in the same national park, two events within an hour, one scream, and then nothing. Whatever happened that day, no new evidence ever surfaced. The figure in the woods was never identified. No campsite, no footprints, no trace of another person was ever found. Only that single lingering echo, a scream fading into the ridges of the Smoky Mountains. And with it, the uneasy question that still haunts the case. Did anyone else see what really happened to Dennis Martin? By midsummer 1969, the official search for Dennis Martin had ended. But the questions were only beginning. What could make a child vanish in seconds? Why was there no trace, not a footprint, not a shred of red cloth from his jacket? And why, after all these years, does nothing about this case quite add up? Investigators considered every angle. The first and most logical theory, an accident. Dennis, maybe trying to hide from his friends, wandered off. He could have slipped down a ravine, fallen into a creek, or been caught in one of the Smokies' sudden storms. Nature in those mountains is beautiful, but merciless. But if Dennis had fallen, why wasn't he found? Hundreds of trained searchers scoured every ravine, every drainage. Not one sign of him. Not even a button, not a single bone, not a torn scrap of red cloth. Search experts said it was almost impossible for a child to disappear so completely in that area. And that's where the theories begin to branch out. Another theory, animal attack. Black bears roam the Smokies, as do wild boar. But even then, search teams would have found signs of struggle, blood, clothing, tracks, something. There was nothing. And according to rangers, a bear carrying off a 6-year-old through those woods would have left a visible trail. There wasn't one. So if it wasn't nature, was it something human? That's where the abduction theory comes in. The Key family's report of the rough-looking man near Rowan's Creek fits the timeline. Some believe Dennis might have wandered into the woods, been seen by someone else, and taken. No one knows who that person could have been. No suspects, no witnesses beyond the Keys. But the possibility has never been ruled out. It's one of the few explanations that fits the eerie absence of physical evidence. Yet, there's something about this case that makes people wonder if there's more to it. Something hidden beneath the surface, something the official reports don't explain. The presence of the Green Berets, their separate search patterns, the secrecy, the way certain records never surfaced. What were they really doing there? Were they simply helping, or was there another purpose? And this brings us to the whispers, the unverified stories passed around over decades. Some say the terrain itself holds secrets, caves hidden deep in the ridges, old moonshiner routes from the early 1900s, even local legends of strange sounds and sudden vanishings dating back generations. No proof, no records, just stories told in low voices around campfires when the mist rolls in. But here's the truth. No theory has ever fully explained what happened to Dennis Martin. Not the weather, not animals, not abduction, not anything. 50+ years later, not a single confirmed piece of evidence has been found. The forest kept its silence. And that's where you come in. What do you think happened that day? Was Dennis lost to the wilderness, hidden by time and nature itself? Or did someone find him before the search ever began? How do you explain the scream the Keys heard? The shadow running through the trees, the sudden arrival of the Green Berets? I want to know your theory. Leave a comment. Tell me what you believe. Maybe together we can see something the investigators missed. Decades later, hikers still pass through those same trails. The meadow at Spence Field hasn't changed much. Every summer, families walk where Dennis once stood. And sometimes, when the wind moves just right, some say they can still hear faint laughter echoing through the trees. Maybe it's just the forest playing tricks, or maybe the mountains remember. When the official search ended in July 1969, the mountains went quiet again. The rangers packed up their tents, the helicopters stopped circling, and the silence returned. The same silence that began the moment Dennis Martin disappeared. But that silence didn't bring peace. It brought questions. Questions that have lasted more than 50 years. For the Martin family, there was no closure. Bill Martin went home to Knoxville and kept searching on his own, weekends, holidays, whenever he could. He never found a trace. Even decades later, he refused to call it an accident. He said the mountains took something from him he could never get back. The disappearance of Dennis Martin changed the way national parks handle missing person cases forever. Before 1969, there was no centralized system, no coordinated response teams, no shared data between parks. After Dennis vanished, the Park Service created the Search and Rescue Branch, training rangers in grid searches, scent tracking, and aerial coordination. Out of tragedy came reform, but not answers. Still, people never stopped wondering what really happened on that ridge. Every decade brings new theories, new retellings, new attempts to solve the impossible puzzle. Writers, investigators, and hikers still visit Spence Field, standing in the same meadow, trying to imagine that single instant when Dennis vanished into the trees. Some say you can feel something there, not sinister, not evil, just heavy, like the forest remembers. If you ever walked those trails, would you stop and listen? Would you look toward the tree line and wonder what's hidden in that endless green? What do you think happened to Dennis Martin? Did the forest swallow him whole, or did someone take him unseen, unheard, leaving behind no trace? Pause for a moment and imagine being there, the echo of children laughing, a flash of red in the corner of your eye, then nothing, only the hum of wind through the pines. Tell me in the comments, if you were part of that search team, where would you have looked first? Over the years, time eroded the clues. The notebooks of rangers grew yellow with age. Photographs faded, witnesses passed on, but the mystery refused to die. Every so often, someone claims to have found something, an old shoe, a scrap of fabric, a rumor of bones deep in the backcountry. Each time, investigators check. Each time, nothing connects. Some say Dennis's disappearance was part of a pattern, other strange vanishings in the Smokies, each one unexplained. But in every case, the forest tells no secrets. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all. Sometimes, the wilderness wins. To this day, visitors leave small toys and red ribbons near the trail at Spence Field. Little gestures for a boy who never came home. The park rangers don't remove them. They say it feels right to let them stay. A reminder that some mysteries in these mountains aren't meant to be solved, only remembered. So what do you believe? Did Dennis Martin simply get lost in the wild? Or did something else happen in those hills that day, something we'll never understand? Is there truth still buried out there, waiting for the right eyes to find it? If you think you have a theory, share it. Let's talk about it. Because maybe the only way to keep Dennis's story alive is to keep asking the questions no one could ever answer. More than half a century has passed since Dennis Martin vanished. His story has become part of the Smoky Mountains themselves, whispered through the pines, carried on the wind, remembered by strangers who never met him. It's not just the story of one child. It's the story of how fragile we all are against the wild, and how even in the age of helicopters and search grids, there are still places in this world that refuse to give up their secrets. Dennis's family never stopped hoping, and every summer, hikers still pass through that same clearing on Spence Field, some leaving flowers, others just standing in silence. They look out across the ridges, and for a moment, everyone who knows this story asks the same question: what really happened here? If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with this story. What's your theory? Was Dennis lost to the elements, or did something else happen deep in those woods? Leave your thoughts below. Next time, we'll explore another case, one that echoes the same haunting questions, where truth hides in plain sight and time refuses to let go. These cases drew attention, resources, and years of effort. Searches expanded, leads were followed. For a time, it felt as though answers were inevitable. But time didn't bring clarity. It thinned the evidence and softened the details. What remains are fragments, questions still unanswered, and families still waiting. In the final part, the focus shifts to disappearances where even less remains. The noise has faded, the trail has grown cold, and the silence is harder to ignore.